Good evening. Welcome to the Community Board 9, Same Gender Loving LGBTQ Task Force meeting this Tuesday, December 19th. It is 6:32 p.m. and I'm calling the meeting to order. We have no minutes from last month, so we will forego.
I think Clayton forwarded that.
Did you forward the
Yeah.
minutes? I thought you
Yeah, we
had.
do.
I told Madison.
Just like 20 minutes ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That might account for it.
Though maybe Clayton, I'm not, I'm sure Clayton probably also shared them after the meeting.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. But I know for a fact that as recently as like 20 minutes ago, they were forwarded.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe it just had, maybe Madison didn't get them the previous time. I'll make sure to send it out to her next time around.
No worries. All right. So we will forego the adoption of the minutes. Can someone move to adopt the agenda?
I motion to adopt the agenda.
All right. And Mr. Sanford.
I second the motion.
You can't second now.
Sorry, I was muted. I second.
Okay. All right. Hello, Mr. Franklin.
Hello, how are we? How's everyone?
We're fairly well. How's about you? Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm doing okay. It's pretty cold, but I'm doing okay.
Good. All right. So this evening we're gonna first debrief our community engagement and education film screening, which we did around Thanksgiving in the foyer at the forum. We screened Scotty and the Secret History of Hollywood for an assemblage of about 10 people, a few of whom were Columbia University staff. So what do we make of that effort, team?
Well, I quite liked the movie, and I thought we had a really great discussion with the rest of the participants who showed up, and I think you're right, John Martin. It wasn't the most well attended event, and part of that I think could be attributed to it was a holiday. Right around the holidays, people might have been out of town and had other commitments, but I think it's encouraging to know that if we can put something like this on again and get a really great showing and a really great crowd to engage with art and history about the LGBTQ community and its impact in culture and in history at large, I think that's a really encouraging and exciting prospect for the next time.
Good thoughts. Clayton?
I primarily concur with what was said. Yeah, I think it would be, I think if we're doing it again, I think there are a few things that got left towards the last minute, and I think Madison mentioned that she kind of wished for staff involvement earlier and that it would have been easier to get the word out that way. So maybe that's something we can all, I guess, take with us for the next time through. But I thoroughly enjoyed the event and had a good time meeting everyone there, so I'm very happy that it happened.
I actually enjoyed it too. I love the film. While as someone commented during the during the discussion, it focuses on a group of privileged elite.
I'm sorry. Can you hand me that brown coat right there?
Yes,
that's my coat.
Well, we could switch.
We all wish we had you this time.
But this is very warm. Oh my God.
Me too. An elite, privileged group from the golden era of Hollywood. In terms of the subject matter, I think it was an interesting window, historical window, on how, for us, for our disposition, on how even this privileged group of, white elites lived in terror of this central facet of their aspect of their identities, lest it be discovered, and how the workaround, that this protagonist, Scotty Bowers, provided them, so that they could, as Stephen Fry, British actor Stephen Fry put it, so they could be human. Because during that era, homosexuality was both criminalized, it was illegal, and pathologized. So, and among the so-called cures included stuff like lobotomies, electroshock therapy, castration even. So, interesting subject matter. Insofar as our planning was concerned, I attribute the low turnout to, as you and Amir suggest, the fact that we did it, during the holidays, but also because we did it last minute. Yeah, and we didn't do sufficient audience development. So that's a note for the next one that we do. Yeah, makes sense?
Yeah, I think if we even, selected, rather than select a date 1 month out, because we only meet once a month.
Mhm.
And if we could select a date even 2 months out, that might have really revolutionized and changed turnout. And maybe something to consider for next time. I'm no longer on social media myself. I don't have any social media. And even when I did have a social media account, I didn't have quite a following. But since I work in, the queer liberation movement, so many of my peers have massive followings on social media with 20,000 Twitter followers. And, I'm sure a lot of us on the call probably know someone who has a pretty big social media network, a pretty big, community to share a flyer out. And I feel like even something like that would have really changed things. And I think next time I'll be more mindful of that and try to think even more about specific like Harlem queer leaders who I might have to dig a little further in the Rolodex but that I think could really help us amplify the promotion for the event and turn more people out next time. Social media is a really strong tool, and I say that as someone who's not super proficient at it, but it is a really valuable tool, I think, for us to maybe use next time.
Sounds like a plan. The thing I'm most gratified about in this, because I knew we were in our planning, while I felt as if the three of us were something of a well-oiled machine in the end. I knew we were in that little tiny window, more or less flying by the seat of our pants.
Right.
But the reason I felt good about our going for it was because we had finally, with Amir's pulling out the stops, and engaging the support of Council Member Abreu, and between that and my following up with West Harlem Development, we finally got access, Carmen, to a Columbia facility for an event all these weeks, months, and years later, finally. And so with that, by that, and for that, we're going to usurp those bits of machinery towards continuing to access Columbia venues for upcoming events, for future events. Yeah.
Yeah, and John Martin, something that came up in that meeting that the council member set up between me and the Columbia Community Affairs team was that it's a lot easier to book space with Columbia facilities through the in-kind benefits when students aren't there. And I wish it was easy. We as residents and community members here, with this binding community benefits agreement, should be able to access those in-kind benefits year round. But realistically, it seems like it's easier to get it when the students aren't there. And maybe the next target for a follow-up film event could be spring break. When the students are out, it might be easier to reserve a space on Columbia campus. We could even start those conversations sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would mean it would be nice to pull in some Columbia students to a film screening next time, maybe.
Yeah.
And we might miss out on that because I'm sure students are going to be out of town during spring break, but it might mean that we could get a date secured early and start promoting the event.
Yeah, I think a minimum of 2 months out.
Yeah.
Yeah. If not 3. Makes sense. Go ahead, Clayton.
I was going to say that could also work in our favor if we're hoping to do Pride Month events using the space. Since it's summer.
Yeah. I mean, so maybe if maybe a trial run for a really great Pride event could be spring break. Students aren't there. We should have an okay time scheduling an event. That can be a trial run to really go ambitious in June for the next screening. When students, at least I know summer school's happening in June, but the main spring semester will end it.
Yeah. Well, no, yours is a prime point, Amir. I just did the Gatekeepers Collective just did an event this past Wednesday at Aaron Davis Hall, which is on City College campus, and we were in the mix with all manner of programming because the students, it's for the campus facilities are for the students primarily. But so yes, that's an important consideration in our planning.
Yeah. Maybe we can even get a really great speaker to come to I love Clayton's idea of doing something around Pride. Maybe we can get a bigwig to come out and
we can get Carmen Neely. That's right. Get Carmen. She's the head of Harlem Pride. She'll teach us how to be proud. Okay, so along these lines, this is a good segue to the next agenda item, which is plotting winter calendar, community engagement calendar. We talked at the last meeting about the possibility, I mean, I have this idea of our doing, this can be 2 birds with 1 stone. The Audre Lorde poetry reading, is that what we talked about?
Or even during any of Audre Lorde's works, maybe.
Right, Audre Lorde, yeah. But where we might also, during African American History Month, invite other young emerging writers of several stripes, to share works, politically focused works. Yeah. During February. That might be a next event. Yeah. That's where we left off, was it not?
Yes.
What do you think? What do folks think?
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Is that something Harlem Pride might want to collaborate with us on?
I have to take it back to the team.
Okay,
We anticipate a very busy year with the center opening and our
yes,
regular Pride activities, so we're really trying to keep it to a minimum. But this
Okay.
doesn't seem like a heavy lift, but I'll take it to the team.
great, great. And where we left off, we talked about panel, perhaps, of people who um, celebrate the work of Audre Lorde,
Yeah.
but also having some young writers
Yeah.
share their works that are in line with the kinds of foci
Right.
that Audre Lorde championed or advanced.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting idea, and maybe even for the panel, what we can do to like help encourage like the networks and access that our electeds here have and leverage that towards this event. Maybe the panel can include, an Audre Lorde scholar or an activist in the community, and then maybe like Senator Cordell Clare or someone who might want to be on the panel and talk about how important Audre Lorde's legacy is for us in the district, for our neighborhoods, for our community. And that way the senator could also help pull in some resources and people. The senator has her own social media accounts that can be used to share a poster for the event. And it would be great to start with a select reading of Audre Lorde's works, and then open the floor for young folks who are inspired by Audre Lorde's legacy to read their own writing. I think that's an exciting way to honor Audre Lorde's legacy and connect it with Black History Month, and which means it's not the most time. February is not too far away, but I'm going on parental leave with my job starting Saturday. So I'm going to have more time to commit to this. I think it's a really exciting idea. I'd like to commit more time to it and do what I can. I'm not an expert in planning these kinds of things. Carmen, I'm sure you have so much more experience putting on stuff like this, but I'm willing to fight for it and do what I can.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do have much more experience, but then I do have a pride to put on as well. So it's just
Experience and time are two very different.
right, right. And then the community center opens and John Martin, you're involved with that as well.
Yes.
So 2024, I'm just gonna try to breathe through it all.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, but so we should pick a date. And I'm thinking, did we talk about the last Tuesday of February?
I don't think we talked about a specific date last time, but that sounds like a last Tuesday, February 27th.
Which is the fourth Tuesday, which is our general meeting day.
Sure.
All right, so typically a committee is formed to head up the planning for an event. But as our body is so small, we would be that committee.
Yeah. Right.
That's what I would say. All right, so we can in email, I guess,
Sure. Yeah.
plot next steps.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we agreed, and also along those lines, we can start reaching out now about booking a venue.
Yes.
How do we feel about the foyer and the forum?
Clayton, would you like to? I've been talking a lot. What did you think of the venue space?
I thought the venue space was great, and I thought it was also great because it was free for us, and given that it seems like we're not at, it seems like the rate at which we're going through the in-kind benefits fund seems to be very slow, so I don't see what would be harmful in seeking out that type of venue again. I think the main concern would be that if they drag their feet again, then that could cause us to have a similarly rushed campaign if we can't be solid confident on a date until mid-February.
And you're right, that was part of what found us flying by the seat of our pants in the planning of the
Right.
screening, because we had to wait for confirmation of the venue. Thanks for that reminder. Okay, all right, so say I'll make a point of reaching out to Zayed tomorrow. Okay. Why don't I? Yeah,
Sure.
towards booking a space, perhaps the foyer in the forum again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Worth a shot, why not? And you know, I think I agree completely with
Ziad, I mispronounced his name, Ziad.
Ziad, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with Clayton, you know, it's great that it's free, and that's a huge plus. You know, it's not the warmest space in the world, especially maybe for art and prose and poetry, but and the radical tradition that, you know, that Audre Lorde belongs to, but it's free, and it there's a certain gravity the space lends, I think, to a reading. I bet it's going to intimidate the hell out of, you know, high school students who want to read their work and stuff. But
Well, they also offered us the Skyline Dining Room, which is positively beautiful and elegant and intimate, more intimate than is the foyer. The challenge with that being that you know, the only way around using their caterers, which are astronomically exorbitant,
right.
is, you know, a kosher or halal caterer.
Right.
So, I mean, that's not an insurmountable necessarily challenge, but okay, yeah, fine.
I also like having the event centered around 125th rather than 116th. Like I think it's like, you know, having it on the Morningside Columbia campus, I think is a little less ideal for people we might be trying to reach.
Right. So I think that's a really good point.
I agree, and I agree. Yes, okay, all right then. So I'll ask about 125th Street.
One other,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
there's a question about a different part of event planning, but
Yeah.
as far as like reaching artists and getting in touch with writers, I don't have a whole lot of context myself. Is that something you have in the Gatekeepers Collective? Or alternatively, like, is that something we could use people from like the Arts and Culture Committee, say, to help us make contact and know organizations to be in touch with?
Yes, and that's a great idea about reaching out to the Arts and Culture Committee. But through Gatekeepers, we have access to some. Through Blackberry Productions, which is my theater company, we might have access to some others. And that's another thought. Artists,
Yeah.
you know, some performing artists might be appropriate for this kind of
Yeah.
event as well.
Yeah.
Okay. We need to identify a slate of prospective presenters. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we can put on our thinking caps along those lines.
Yeah.
And again, over the next week or so going into Christmas, perhaps go back and forth with some ideas along
Yeah.
those lines.
Yeah, well, definitely happy to do that. And also maybe after the new year, when our schedules, you know, open up a little bit more,
Mhm.
maybe, you know, we're a small group, as you said, John Martin, we can't really form a committee on this. This would be the three of us. So maybe, maybe we could even have like a weekly or bi-weekly phone call just to check up on updates and see that things are moving along. I don't want to put too much, I know Clayton's busy with school and you're busy with work. I'm going to be on parental leave, so I'll have a little bit more time to devote to helping plan this. But I'd be happy to help us stay on track with like a weekly check-in of some kind.
Terrific. How's that sound?
Weekly check-in is great. I also have to disclose that the next 3 months are going to be a little hectic for me because I'm looking for jobs and also will be working part-time in addition to school. So I'll be able to make time, and I think like having a recurring time where we get together and talk about planning would make it easier and break the task down into smaller pieces.
Great.
Good. Good. And we're not talking about hours.
Yeah,
Of,
sure.
of meeting, check-ins. Okay, good. So also along these lines, turn towards plotting a winter calendar. I think that may be enough for us. I think we should be thinking about, though, what, for lack of a better framing, what voids exist on the landscape of our lives here in West Harlem that landscape of the same gender loving LGBTQ community that the task force might be helping to fill. What needs are there that we perceive as being unmet?
Well, here's a suggestion.
Mhm.
I forget the name of the company in this moment, the new development that's going to go up on Amsterdam and West 145th.
Mhm.
They contacted me at the request of the city, I believe through the city council member, to just get an idea of what the SGL-LBGTQ community might need here in CB9. And I suggested, since they're gonna have quite a few square feet, or quite a bit of square footage, the company that's there now, the sort of health and wellness company, they're gonna get something like 25,000-30,000 square feet on the bottom floor, and maybe the bottom two. I don't have the specs in front of me, and the call was some months ago. And then they're gonna build affordable and supportive housing on top of that. So I said to them that there is no actual presence of any nonprofit based in West Harlem, and that the only sort of consistent presence is the event, though, of Harlem Pride on 12th Avenue, but that's just one day. So I suggested to them that perhaps they might create an office. It doesn't have to be huge or big, but that community presence could be there. So that may be an office. Of course, I was thinking of a satellite for Harlem Pride, which is something that Councilmember Abreu and I have spoken about, and he suggested it actually when he realized there aren't any LGBTQ specific, SGL LGBTQ specific organizations in Community Board 9. However, this task force might be able to make great use of an office space as well. So that may be something that we could easily lobby our council member for, and also get the backup of CB9. If you all think it's worth it to push through, that's the only opportunity that I really see that could fill a deficit. Right now for any services, you have to go to Central Harlem, mostly Central Harlem, and I believe there are some services that have satellites in East Harlem. But to my knowledge, unless there's something new, there's nothing over here in West Harlem, not a service organization. Harlem Pride, our office is Central Harlem. The center will be Central Harlem. So that's just something to think about as a possibility.
That's a great thing to think about. So when the developer approached you, he was asking if if you were aware of, if either Harlem Pride or might you be aware of some other organizations, SGLBTQ organizations in West Harlem that might need space?
No, it wasn't the developer, that was Councilmember Abreu,
Ah, okay,
right? Because there's gatekeepers, but you all meet in your home.
right.
And Harlem Pride has the event over here, but our office is in Central Harlem.
Where it's in, right.
Right. So I said, there's a presence, but there's no physical presence with an office space. And I said that to Councilmember Abreu, who actually brought it up. And we were talking about it because we were initially talking about Brotherhood Sister of Soul and their new building, which
Mhm.
then turned into a conversation about Harlem Center that's coming. And then he realized, hey, wait, there's no physical presence for SGL LGBTQ space of any kind in West Harlem.
Mhm.
So the city council, not directly the council member here, and the mayor's office suggested that the developers contact me. They wanted some other support because, as we know, there's been some pushback from CB9 constituents, not necessarily the entity of CB9, but just some of the residents here have not really wanted that space because they thought it was going to be a homeless shelter and some other things but they emailed me a proposal that outlines what they mean it to be. And it's basically some supportive housing, affordable housing. I think the ratio was going to be 70-30, which was a slight improvement, of course, over 80-20, that sort of thing. So over the course of the conversation, I said, well, if you're really concerned, as you know, developers, they're mostly concerned with what they want. But I said to them, if you're really concerned about meeting the needs of the SGL LGBTQ community here in West Harlem, it would be nice if you can find 400 square feet, 500 square feet for an actual office that could be a satellite for the organizations here. I mentioned gatekeepers, I did do that. I mentioned Harlem Pride, but I didn't think about the task force, admittedly. And they kind of, because they already have mapped out what they want to do with the space, but it's not been built yet. So some things can change and be adjusted. But they sort of like, oh, you could do things in a lobby, because I gave them the example of during COVID, Harlem Pride was literally the only organization over here passing out masks, hand sanitizers, all of that sort of thing. That was a CBO. And we came over here at the request of Councilmember Abreu, and we were stood by the 145th 123 train. It's just the one train, sorry. And passed out supplies. We also came down here because I live on 139th in Riverside. The 137th Street entrance, that's the park is there.
Mhm.
To the train, we went there and also passed out supplies. Then we connected with Lois, who was able to get us into what's the name of the restaurant? There's a restaurant a couple of blocks up from me. I want to say it's Hamilton. The restaurant, I believe, is just Hamilton. And we were
Okay.
able to pass out supplies at the restaurant. But I was saying, here's another perfect example of why, if there was a physical space, we would have had a place where we could actually leave some supplies and have a regular schedule here during that time frame. But it was difficult to, traipse with enough material from our office and then come out here. We would run out of supplies. We bring like 5 to 6 boxes
I
and be
remember.
done. Yeah, be done in an hour and a half at the
Mhm.
height of COVID. So I was explaining to them about the need and how that space could be very beneficial. And it could be a shared space. They were kind of like, we just want you to send that letter of intent, without saying that, but that was the vibe I was getting. I sent the letter of support, rather, not letter of intent, the letter of support. I sent it, but I think it's more or less getting the ear of Councilmember Abreu, getting back to the contacts at City Hall that contacted me to speak with them in the first place, and then getting the power of CB9 behind the request. I don't see why it couldn't happen 400 or 500 square feet is not huge.
No,
You know, our office is 430 square feet. So if we got 500 or so, that would be a nice, decent space that could be used. However, it is decided among the groups that are over here that it could be used. So that's the only thing I could think of is maybe we could push for something in that development since they're looking for support.
that's a great idea because they've been, it's not Heritage. Heritage is the one that's leaving.
The
or
developer,
that's being displaced.
is it BRC or something? Clayton, I know Clayton, you've been going to the housing committee meetings.
You know
Yeah,
what?
the-
I'm gonna look for that email here. Hold on.
Because
Yeah,
they've
the
been,
developers BRC, like I think Emma Bowen, the Emma Bowen Center is the one that will be remaining there, and I think Heritage will be moving to a different site.
right, the Heritage is the one that's being displaced, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, it is BRC. And it's gonna be called the Hilltop Apartments.
mm-hmm,
And I spoke with Nicole Claire from BRC and Miguel Guadalupe from BRC. And from City Hall was Andrea Bowen. And then the HHS partner for the project that's based in City Hall is Rebecca Giglio or Giglio.
mm-hmm.
And this was back early November when they first contacted me. I can share the slides they sent if you would like me to do that.
Certainly, yes.
Okay.
I mean, and to be clear, these are appeasement measures as they attempt to get the cooperation of Community Board 9.
Right. I need the ability to share. Right now it's disabled.
Oh, right.
Here, is this controlling? this?
Yes. You
Okay, well,
don't hurt yourself. It's all right.
okay, oh boy.
So there we go. Share screen.
Well, I think I need to
Right,
give
right, right. You
Carmen,
gotta Carmen, make her a co-host. Co-host. There we go. And yes. And there you go, Carmen.
Okay. Is it big enough? I think I can make it a little larger here.
That's great.
So this is, you know, the rendering, this yellow and tan sort of building. And of course, the bottom is what it looks like now. And Nicole is here, the Chief Real Estate Development Officer, and Miguel is the VP of, looks like they meant to have community relations here.
Mhm.
And just some details here. I mean, I can email this if you would like some history of that corner. Emma Bowen, that's right. So they're gonna give them 21,000 square feet. And of course, at first they were like, well, maybe you can have some space out of the Emma Bowen stuff. And I'm like, well, as someone who's working on a project for 20,000 square feet and it's been going on for years, we pretty much have earmarked what we like to do with the space. And I said, seeing as though they have to get out of their current space to accommodate your project, I don't think it would be great to ask them to give us space when you're building many more square feet on top of that. And they were kind of quiet.
Also, you're spot on. Also, to the 21,000 square feet is a small fraction of the space that had been devoted to health and wellness for the community.
Right.
And
Right.
so that they've just come up with 21,000 square feet because it was something like half that or less in previous iterations that they proposed to CB9.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
So it goes into talking about their redevelopment plans. And then affordability, what that would look like. So it's for, you know, formerly homeless, but it's not a shelter.
Right, it's supportive housing for people, formerly unhoused folk, as the new phraseology
Right. And they did say, you know, anyone in the community can avail themselves of the supportive services. But as I'm learning a bit more for another project about supportive services, their first priority will be the residents, not
Yes,
the residents of that building. It won't be just anybody else who lives in CB9 that may need this.
right.
Then it's just some design features. So these communal spaces, they were like, oh, well, if you ever need to pass anything out, you could come into these communal spaces. And I just, you know, I was like, okay, I see where this is going.
Mhm.
But
Okay,
if anything, to answer the question, this is the only thing I can think of that maybe we could get the power of CB9 behind to push for some kind of space that would be used by SGL LGBTQ groups that are based here in West Harlem.
great. That's a fine idea. Yes, please share that
Okay.
presentation.
If I email it to you, John Martin, you have the emails of everyone else, or could I just
I
send it?
do. Yes,
Okay. Or could I just send it in response to the notice that was sent out to the meeting today?
either works.
Either works. Okay.
Yeah. Good. Chad, anything occur to you about
Unmet needs.
unmet needs in the same gender loving LGBTQ community in West Harlem that the task force might look to begin tapping or filling?
Um. hmm. Let me think about that
Okay.
for a while. I feel like inclusive in that question is the work that the gatekeepers does, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so how we might be able to better facilitate. Let me think on that line on what we might need specifically for the work that we're doing.
Okay. Yeah, so chief among our focuses, and I think should be our focus as a task force as well, involves destigmatizing stigmatized identity. More than just normalizing same gender loving, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, queer, and gender expansive identities, is is supporting real inclusion, yeah, and respect and for our needs, you know. First, moving us out of invisibility to
Yeah.
the extent that we still are, you know, and so we can keep thinking along these lines. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great framework, and you know, something that comes to mind, though this is less specific to the SGL LGBT West Harlem community, what unmet needs exist here. This is a more general, you know, perspective, but I think especially youth, you know, LGBTQ youth face a lot of hurdles and stigma and violence. They're more likely to be displaced from their homes, to be ripped from their homes by racist child welfare investigations. You know, something like 95% of you know, ACS, Administration of Children's Services investigations in New York City target Black families, right? This rips a disproportionate number of Black and brown, queer and trans youth out of their homes and places them into foster care, into, you know, or worse, into the school to prison pipeline. So I think, you know, I also need, like, you know, Mr. Franklin needs, I think I need a little bit more time to think about what specifically the needs are, but I think centering and focusing on LGBTQ youth is really important, especially, this being less of an issue in New York, so to speak. There's been just so many attacks on gender affirming care for youth nationally, and I think keeping that in mind is, it affects. I think it affects young people here too, in some sense. So, those are just some of my thoughts.
And good thoughts they are. Okay, and that's feels like a natural segue to the next agenda item, which might relieve us of some of the, for lack of a better term, burden of conceiving means and measures of filling the voids that exist on the landscape of our lives, of SGL-LBGTQ folks' lives in West Harlem. Crafting a brief survey regarding the needs of SGL-LBGTQ West Harlem community members. Do we think that's a good idea?
Yeah.
I like the idea of it.
I'm sorry. Clayton? You were
I
gonna-
was just saying I like the idea of it. And I think I guess maybe the challenge would be to know what type of information we're trying to get. Like, are we trying to, like I imagine one world we could put out a short survey which would be advertised on like the Link NYC boards and would be advertised via flyers, where we just want people to, ideally give just a couple minutes of their time, but then it's like, what information should we try to get? Are we trying to like ask them about what event programming they would like? Are we asking about like what services are missing? Like, I think we'd want to like sharpen our focus, because I think if we make the survey too convoluted, then we're not going to get a whole lot of responses at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So, yeah, do we want to, gauge what services people feel as if they need, that they, like Carmen just shared a great idea, space or, organization to be able to provide services to the community, housing, education. So, what needs?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that would be spot on. Definitely it needs to happen. And we should think in terms of where we can access the participants, like the Ali Forney, right, in the various places where particularly young people are serviced. And maybe we look at some other surveys or various intake documents, right, that service this population, particularly young people, and at some point in time, just assess how those services are going as well.
Right. Now, is Harlem United still around, Carmen?
I believe so. I think they pared down a bit, but I think they're still here.
Okay, because beyond Harlem United and Ali Forney, who we have known over the years, who were the only ones for a longest time who had actually had beds
Right.
for LGBTQ youth. Who else does service provision in West Harlem? There's no Covenant House, no under 21, no.
And California actually moved to East Harlem, if I'm correct. I
Okay,
don't believe they're any, I don't believe they're above the Popeyes anymore.
okay.
I'll
And that
have
was
to-
Central Harlem, right?
Right.
Who was it?
Was there, I don't know if they were in West Harlem, was there something like the Hedrick Martin or something like that?
Hedrick Martin, though, is way downtown.
Yeah,
Oh.
they're in the Village by NYU.
Oh, sorry.
Right.
That's-
California, yeah, was in Central Harlem, although it was over, what, St. Nicholas? That's not
Uh,
quite West Harlem
Right,
yet.
right, that's borderline, right,
Okay.
Central West Harlem, yeah. Okay,
Does Housing Works have a presence up here? No, not really.
not in West Harlem.
No.
In fact, does Housing Works have a presence in Harlem at all?
They will
I-
soon.
Oh.
Ah.
They're having something that probably in the next 2 years will be up and running. But
Okay.
currently, I don't believe so. I think it literally is you, John Martin Green, with
Okay.
gatekeepers in terms of an address.
And Chad Franklin.
And
Okay, well, right, okay, in terms of an address, right, I got you.
right, I don't know that anybody has an actual office that represents any facet of the SGL LGBTQ community in West Harlem. And I believe that was the point our council member was making.
And a good point it is.
Right. At one point, we were in conversation about trying to see if there were any city-owned properties in West Harlem that could be leased. You know how city-owned properties can be leased at about $1 a year, that kind of thing, very low. But we really didn't find anything outside of a couple of possible availabilities of, you know how the NYCHA projects have space sometimes, community space.
Yes,
There were some of those, but they weren't really viable in terms of either they were promised to be occupied or they needed renovation of some sort.
mhm. Okay,
But beyond looking at that, we really didn't get much further.
and you may recall, well, pre-pandemic certainly, but even beyond the pandemic, the task force having begun pursuing the Honda provision effort around the Ellington about we got O'Donnell, Gail Brewer, and some other city council and assembly people's support around the idea of taking up the Housing Our Neighbors with Dignity Act to
Right, I remember that. What's the status of all of that now?
well, the status of all of that now is that it's dead in the water immediately. What with the immigration glut that the city is navigating, nobody's going to be looking at. They've turned it back into, it was laying dormant, which is why we were looking at attempting to use the Honda provision to secure it in partnership with the CDO and repurpose it as supportive housing for youth, same gender of LGBTQ youth and elders. But they've turned it back into, housing for homeless families. So until, so there are no vacancies or places that are lying dormant in the face of the immigration crisis, the refugee
Okay.
crisis, but okay, survey, doing a survey. And it should be probably, my impulse is a short survey.
Yeah.
Asking about the needs of the same gender and the LGBTQ community, or what services they would like to see.
Yeah.
In West Harlem.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think it makes sense.
Okay. All right, who should we task with crafting this survey? Who has, we need like a social scientist type. Okay, and I'm probably the closest to that as a health educator. All right.
Dr. Green, there's a survey that we did for our young people at the Option Center during the pandemic that just kind of looked at the various things that they thought that they would need in the future, like housing insecurity, food insecurity for those of them who were on work study, right, with the schools being closed and all that. So that's something I can share with you.
Terrific.
interestingly enough, we got a lot of feedback, and then we ended up doing something with I forgot, it's the research center, I think, out of NYU. So there are a few pieces of things that I can forward to you that you could kind of, just look at and select
As,
from.
as something of a template.
Yeah, or yeah, something just to gauge your thoughts as you're.
Okay. Terrific. Terrific. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts along these lines? And then we will have to decide to who all we want to pitch this survey and through what channels. But okay, that can be next steps, which we can pick up after the first of the year. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right. Any old business? New business?
One very small item.
Yes.
I was talking with people I stopped by the health committee earlier this month, and they were talking about a campaign with the Link NYC signs, and that they basically, it was like a mental health destigmatization campaign where they would, I think the whole idea is like it's okay to not be okay, and they basically, the idea is to help people learn about services that exist in the district. So for instance, like there are, several billboards they're drafting for uh senior services or like various nonprofits or organizations around. And I was asking them if they would consider one about health or social needs for people in the LGBTQ community. And they were very excited about that, but I think they weren't sure which organization to put up or where to link to, given that some of the organizations we've discussed before um, are based in Central or East Harlem. So I guess I wanted to float it to this committee so that we could get back to them with something. I mean, maybe we should just ask them to direct folks to things like Harlem United, even though it's not here, or maybe we could, maybe there's someone at Emma Bowen we could put up or something of that sort. But I wanted to kind of crowdsource it to this group to see what people think.
Well, It's Okay Not to Be Okay campaign. Um, Say it again, Clayton. What you pitched the idea of something like it's Okay Not to Be Okay campaign for the LGBTQ community to link NYC?
It wouldn't so much be a new campaign, but rather like they're going to be rotating through, like every month they'll have uh two different slides that will be up that people will see. And the idea is just like a lot of them are focused on particular groups. So like they'll have groups for senior citizens, groups like ads that are more youth tailored, ads that are, maybe more tailored to reproductive health or things like that. And I think the question was like, would it make sense to have one of those advertisements be based, like be intended for those in the LGBTQ community, basically?
Sure, but what services or might they be, what might we be telling people that they can avail themselves of?
Well, I think that's the question that Kate Clayton's proposing to us, that if,
Oh,
so, yeah, there's, as, one of the kind of left out communities in this Link Cis, or sorry, not Link Cis, Link NYC, uh, ad campaign that the health committee is working on. Clayton observed was, what about LGBTQ New Yorkers in our district? they were excited about the idea. So I think Clayton's kind of asking us, is there an organization in our district that provides services or support to SGL-LGBT New Yorkers in our district that we can maybe feature on a link
I see.
on a Link
Okay.
NYC
Okay.
advertisement.
Well,
And I think that could be something either along the lines of like, you know, medical or like sexual health, or it could be along the lines of like, you know, mental health or organizations that are more like community or socially minded. Like I imagine either way would be appropriate for the campaign.
yeah, yeah, Carmen, yeah, the coalition, yeah, none of the coalition organizations, save for, you know, Harlem Pride, you know, with your address, or, you know, you being on the, and Gatekeepers Collective, there are no organizations in West Harlem that provide mental health or other services to the SGLBTQ community.
Like there's really a void over here.
Yeah,
And that was what I was discussing with Councilmember Abreu early in his first term, that, you know, and literally we were just having a regular conversation and we got onto that topic. And it was as we spoke more, it was really just like what's happening here. Like, wait a minute. No, that's Central Harlem. That's Central Harlem. That's here. That's there. But there's really nothing for our community based in West Harlem. Really nothing. It's very bare over here.
okay. Yeah, it's a vacuum.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so then it would seem that we might be onto something in terms of identifying voids, vacuums, unmet needs, and what services people, you know, folk look forward to. What services people need that are not, that there's no provision for here.
So maybe you could leave it either open-ended or a couple of check boxes for the typical things, and then an other where they can add to that.
Okay, you're talking about in terms of the survey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay. So I will, using the document that Chad provides as a template, for lack of a better framing, come up with a brief survey and share it at the next meeting?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Okay. What's
Were
the
you-
date of the next meeting?
it's the fourth Tuesday of the month, so that would be January, drum roll.
23rd.
Yes, January 23rd.
Okay.
And,
That was-
John Mark, were you thinking, you know, like just a Google form for the survey, like, you know,
Or Survey Monkey,
or Survey Monkey? There's also Qualtrics, QUALTRIX is another one. I think Qualtrics does have, you can make surveys for free, but you don't get all of the bells and whistles for free, maybe through Qualtrics. But I think I made a free survey through work that we never even distributed through Qualtrics, and what came with it for free seemed plenty for, you know, we don't need to do really detailed data analysis, I think, on the survey results. And it might turn out that even just like a Google form might be sufficient enough to to this purpose, and Google Forms are free.
Okay.
So we don't have to, worry about that. And I know Clayton, knows a lot about computer science, and I don't know if you have thoughts, Clayton, about like a survey platform, if you have any experience.
Or survey instrument that might
I use
be-
Google Forms for everything.
Yeah, Google Form it's free, and I think it's gonna be
Okay,
enough for this. Yeah.
sounds like a plan. All right then. With no other old business or new business, do I have to say it?
A motion to adjourn?
Second,
Ah, all right then. We are well met and we are adjourned. Thank you.
All right. Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you, Ms.
Thanks to
Neely.
you too.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin.
You're very
We'll
welcome.
be
you all
in
later.
touch, Ms. Neely.
Happy
All right.
holidays, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Should I, what do I, should I leave the
Well, you should stop the recording.
stuff?
Oh. Ooh, just in time.
Oh gosh, it's like frozen, no?
I don't know. Ah,
What's going on?
we should probably let Madison know.
It's going very slowly.
Hey Siri, call Madison Ayala.
Stop recording?
Mm-hmm.